Just reflect a little bit on how that came to pass and what your feelings were in terms of leaving South Carolina, leaving your husband's family, and going to a brand new city with now a young family, etc.
Well, to be brutally honest, I was behind it. I had an awful lot to do with it. And I was really worried there. We were moved in town, and by that time we had 5 sons. Henry and Tigger had 4 sons, and Austin and Nancy had 1 son. They had a law office. Francis and Edmund's just with daughters. But those, I didn't see where the future to my 5 boys was going to be in Charleston, South Carolina. And what I kept seeing in other people our age were that these children were all, and some of the parents, their whole idea of what success was to fish and to hunt and to live in Charleston and belong to the yacht club and have maybe, gratefully, if you could find a rich Yankee friend who wintered at Yeaman's Hall or at a lovely place, they would invite you up to hunt. And I just saw that my 5 weren't going to have a chance because, and additionally, both Aunt Tigger and Aunt Nancy were fairly well-to-do, and I wasn't. And Fa wasn't going to make any money particularly. He was on a salary. And I didn't see, I was real wild, and I got very disagreeable to your father. I was horrible. And he was in the dean's office and got lost that, and so it wasn't all my fault, but I wanted to get out of there. I wanted to get you 5 boys away from the idea of the goal of the being, and all to go to the St. Cecilia Ball, to be a member of the yacht club, and to hunt and fish. And I didn't have enough money to have a place in the country or to do anything that was better than just having a house in Charleston. And I was delighted, and it served me right, actually, because it was a tough 4 years up there, because I was never home, and I had 5 boys and no help, and we were living on very little. And thank God for the hockey and the little rink outside, because you all would come home to that house and you'd go out through the basement window and play the hockey. And I didn't start skating there. I went out one day and got my old skates and skated on our little rink, and I could hardly stand up and I didn't do anything. Julian was miserable. And the first year he was 3 I think. And we had a wonderful Ethel Johnson who worked for me at 5 Gibbs Street, and she took over on Julian. I brought him home from the hospital and handed him over to her. And he'd go out there, that house, that first month was just awful. And he'd go out and it was cold, and he'd come back in and he'd stamp his feet in the kitchen and say, "Mummy, I don't like this no good, no house. I'm going back to Charleston and Ethel." And I mean, my feeling was, you tore your heart to pieces. I mean, you just thought, what am I going to do with this? And I thought, well, you and I, Julian and I, have got to work this out, and you're with me for this winter. And then we're going somewhere. We've got Alec and Jamie in the back of the car, and we're going somewhere in Evanston, and it's one of those awful days when it's snow, but not really snow. It's mostly rain, but it's junk on the windshield, and there isn't a leaf on any tree. And I'm singing. And I was just seeing this beginning of my winter when there's going to be some snow. And in the back seat comes Mummy. "You are at home up here." I stopped me cold, and I said, "Yes, I really am." "Well, we aren't." But then you guys, and then Dan was having an awful time because he could climb fences in Charleston and go. He didn't have to take any roads or sidewalks to go anywhere because they were all relatives or friends. Well, he starts this in Winnetka, and nobody wants Daniel running through their backyard, and he's got to go up the sidewalk and cross with the crossing guard to get to school, and that was an adjustment for him. Austin lucked out. He had the most wonderful teacher. He was having trouble with studying in Charleston. He'd been being tutored, and the teacher in that grade that he had just said, "Leave this one to me." And she made that year for Austin, and Austin came through that grade and went into the next grade, and from there on out, the studying was not a problem. And she said to me what she did with him was that his attention wasn't too good, and that whenever he got fed up with the front of the class, she had puzzles and books and things in the back, and he just said, "Get up and go in the back of the class, and when you're ready, come back and join us." And I don't know what else she did, but she was marvelous, and I think she saved Austin academically that year, and she'd been in the school for 20 years. So. But I would take Fa every Sunday and drive him to the O'Hare airport, and then I'd pick him back up on Thursday or Friday, and then he spent most weekends sailing, which not in the winter, but we did, and it was a tough time for me, because doing all the housework and taking care of five sons and no husband around to help, except on the weekends. But I loved the snow. I'm glad to leave it again later, but for the first year, the snow was great.